Most folks who know acoustic guitars quickly recognize names like Gibson, Martin, and Taylor, but the name Larrivee might be a lot less familiar. And although we all have our own taste and our own favorites, Larrivee just might be the unsung jewel of quality acoustic guitars.
Hi, thanks for visiting another Great Pickers channel. A short while back I did a video on my Martin D35S, and it was one of the more popular videos that I'd done, so I thought I would do one about Larrivee guitars and use my Larrivee, which is an LVOF IV, as an example. In 2006, for the first time in 40 years really, I had an opportunity to purchase another high-quality acoustic guitar. As you might imagine, I was anxious just to find the most perfect guitar that I could. So I took an opportunity to look around at every guitar I could get my hands on. Now, I live roughly in the metropolitan Atlanta area, so I had all of those resources at my fingertips. And I had a chance to play a lot of guitars at Guitar Center, which I'm sure we're all familiar with that, and at some independent guitar dealers as well. So I played some Martins, I played some Taylors, I played some Gibsons, and a handful of other things. And I got close on a couple. There was a Martin OM 35, or excuse me, I think it was an OMV 35 was the actual model. Just a beautiful, beautiful guitar. It was used, it had basically no issues with it. And it was just a wonderful tone. Very similar in some respects to my Martin D35S, but the difference in the body style made a little bit difference in the tone as well. And I was really interested in that guitar, but not so much that I felt like I could just go pull the trigger. I had heard from some online research that I'd done about Larrivee guitars and a handful of others, Breedloves, which I'd had a chance to play a couple of Breedloves, and I knew I wasn't in the market for a boutique guitar. I just didn't have the money for a Collins or a Bourgeois or a Santa Cruz or that kind of thing. So I needed to stay just under that level of spending. But I had read about Larrivees online, and I had a hard time finding a Larrivee guitar to play and see what I thought about it. I did stumble upon one, which was a Larrivee LV09, which was very similar to this guitar here. I'll talk to you a little bit more about the differences, but the primary difference was it was a Rosewood backed guitar, whereas this is a Mahogany back and sides guitar. But one of the things that I had learned about Larrivees was that Jean Larrivee, or Larrivee, had a reputation for being a master at mahogany-based guitars. Not that his other guitars, had to take a backseat to anybody, but that seemed to be his real forte. So I didn't pull the trigger on that one either. There were a couple of minor condition issues with it. Finally, I stumbled upon a really small guitar shop in Decatur, Georgia, which for those of you who don't know, it's sort of metropolitan Atlanta area, and he had several Larrivee guitars in there. And I stopped in one day, astonished to find them, sat down to play. And one of the ones that I played, maybe the second or third Larrivee I played, was a Larrivee L05, which is essentially a guitar like this one with a couple of minor differences. It did not have the Venetian cutaway, and it didn't have onboard electronics as this one does. But otherwise, it was same woods, same neck configuration, and that sort of thing. And it only took one strum, and the search was over. And that was because that strum had such a beautiful, clear, even tone across the entire set of strings. It wasn't sort of bass accentuated like a Martin. It wasn't sort of treble accentuated like a Taylor. It was just even as could be. And so I was able to find this particular guitar through an online situation. And although I was very reticent to buy a guitar sight unseen, I was just so happy with the Larrivee that I did have a chance to play that I was willing to take a chance. And I have been grateful every day since that I did, because for me, this may be the most perfect overall acoustic guitar I've ever put my hands on. No guitar is perfect, I know, and there are compromises everywhere, but for an all-around ability for strumming, for picking, for tone, for build, for appearance, I've just never had a guitar I thought was quite as well-rounded as this one. So I thought I'd take a couple of minutes and talk to you about Larrivee guitars in general, and what their story is, what makes them special, and then also talk to you a little bit after that about this particular guitar and just play a couple of simple examples of it.
I want to give you a brief overview of the Larrivee company. There's a lot more great detailed information available if you're interested, and I'll provide some links in the description to some great articles and videos. In the late 60s, Jean Larrivee began an apprenticeship in Toronto, building classical guitars, but quickly moved out on his own. By the early 70s, he began working with steel string guitars and soon set about developing innovations that would be the hallmark of Larrivee guitars for years to come. And among those were the development of an original body design, the L body, and bracing designs adapted from classical guitar construction that enhanced the tone and articulation. As the reputation of Larrivee guitars began to grow, so did the demand for production. In response, they moved from Toronto to Victoria, then to Vancouver, and now they're produced in Oxnard, California, though the Canadian heritage seems to remain as a defining part of their work. Over the years, many models of guitars have been produced. Here's a look from the 2019 catalog, which includes these primary categories. There are many versions of the L body available, as well as dreadnoughts, orchestra models, traditional models, and 12 strings. Their parlor guitars are some of the most well-respected of all parlor guitars. They often source unique tone woods and also provide for custom shop creations. Along the way, Jean Larrivee and Larrivee guitars have gained a reputation for quality of build and clarity of sound. Some comments that I've been able to gather include these. From Guitar Adventures: all it takes is a single strum on any Larrivee guitar to understand why so many people love Larrivee. Also, Jean Larrivee is known among luthier circles to have a keen eye for woods, and he travels all over the world sourcing only the best. In fact, Larrivee has even become a major supplier of good Sitka spruce to other manufacturers. From Reverb.com: founded in Toronto, Ontario in 1967 by company president and master builder Jean Larrivee, Larrivee guitars have been producing boutique quality acoustics for 40 years. From the Larrivee Guitar Forum comes this from a member, speaking of Larrivee's Oxnard, California facility. I had business near Oxnard today and stopped in at the Larrivee factory. It was nothing like I expected. I was thinking it would be a huge building and very automated. Yes, there are some CNC machines, routers, etc., but these guitars are truly handmade. That's what is so nice about Larrivees. They are touched by human hands all the way through to the end. The attention to detail is astounding. No wonder they are works of art when they end up in our hands.
One of Jean Larrivee's real contributions to an innovation to the design of a acoustic guitar was his creation of the L body guitar, which this is an example of an L body guitar. And what this is, it's slightly smaller than a dreadnought, but it doesn't make such a compromise in sound that there's any real drop-off to speak of in the sound of a dreadnought. So it's a guitar that can bridge between the dreadnought guitar and more of the auditorium or orchestra style guitars. What I thought I would do is just let you have a look at these two guitars side by side so you can see there's not a tremendous amount of difference in the size. You can see probably the L body is what your guess is good as mine, probably, but 85 to 90% as big as a dreadnought, which is a big guitar. And as you look across the sides, you can see that the depth is slightly narrower, but not tremendously narrower.
This guitar is a 2006 model LVOF IV. The L stands for the body style, or an L body. The V indicates the Venetian cutaway, and the 05 indicates it's one of the select Mahogany series. And the E indicates it has electronics. Because it's a Mahogany L body, it might be a good example of Larrivee's guitar's wheelhouse. Here's a front view. The top is Sitka spruce, The bridge is ebony with a compensated tusk saddle. I replaced the bridge pins, which were originally black, with these that have the abalone insets in them. There's an abalone rosette, which I think adds just a touch of tasteful, understated bling. A faux tortoiseshell pickguard, a little bit thicker than you might normally run across. There's a Venetian cutaway, beautiful maple binding. It has a 14-fret neck, ebony fretboard with micro dot fret markers, and a 1 3/4 tusk nut. The headstock has an ebony overlay with a nice inlay of the Larrivee logo. The neck is satin finished, solid mahogany with truss rod, and it has 18-to-1 tuning machines. The original tuner buttons were black, and I replaced them with these that are chrome. At the time I purchased this guitar, the available electronics were an LR Baggs iMix system, combining an under-saddle pickup and a soundboard transducer with a barn door style preamp. While I've been very pleased with this system, the one thing I wish was different would be to have had a sound hole mounted preamp to avoid the big side cutout required by the preamp.
I wanted to give you a little idea of how this particular Larrivee sounds, so I thought I'd play you a short bit of Emerson, Lake & Palmer's From the Beginning. Because I'm dealing with some ambient noise here, I thought I would just go ahead and plug the guitar directly into the recorder on a very clean patch, and hopefully give you a really good fair representation of how this guitar sounds.